Hello, guys. I hope everyone's had an amazing week. Welcome back to the next Warrior Academy podcast and live interview, streamed live to our groups in Dubai and the UK. I'm here today with James Davis. James is a psychologist and a midlife mentor, and he's director of 38 Degrees North. I'm here today with James to talk about immunity and nutrition myths. So, James, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Hello to everyone watching.
How has your week been?
The week's been amazing. We just actually finished a virtual retreat since the lockdown situation started. We obviously can't run our in-person retreats in all the lovely spots we do them, like Ibiza and Marbella. So we came up with the concept of running a virtual retreat, basically creating a private group, streaming everything. So live workouts, live workshops, bringing in different experts to talk about different things. And yeah, it's worked really well. So we just did another one this weekend. Yeah, just
Wow.
coming down from that. It was amazing.
Right. That sounds amazing. And it all went smoothly, even though you kind of had to pivot online very, very quickly.
Yeah, the hardest thing is finding your training space. So we're in central London at the moment. So we're fortunate here. We're allowed to go out and exercise. But for those of you that are in London might have seen that the weather was very good at the weekend, which meant that a lot of people being quite flexible with their social distancing and lockdown rules.
Right.
The parks were heaving, but we find quiet corners, just set up our camera and go for it. So we had, great time.
Amazing job. Yeah, you're speaking to a community of home dojo creators. So when the lockdown happened, you would be amazed how creative some of the parents and instructors became to turn their living rooms or bedrooms into dojos. So yeah, I think everyone's in this position where they're trying to be super creative so they can continue their training, and it sounds like you guys did an amazing job of that. So great you could get out.
Yeah, you know what? This time it's all about adaptability. You know, Claire and I, my wife, are on a business. We're real gym bunnies. So, you know, we joke that we're not that sociable. We go to bed really early, get up really early, but we love going to the gym. It's the main thing we're missing. But it's just finding a way to adapt with it. So we're doing lots of workouts for things like resistance bands, kettlebells. On the retreat we did, you know, recognizing a lot of people don't have equipment. We're using like water bottles, tin cans, just showing people different stuff they can do with their body weight or stuff they've got around the home to still get a decent conditioning workout.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it all comes down to resourcefulness, really, doesn't it? I mean, if you just tap into that, and sometimes getting professional advice at the very beginning of this can be a really good bonus. You know, learn how to use the kit that you've got around you.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, we're here today to talk about nutrition and obviously immunity. I'd love to give a bit more of an insight into who James is and what led you to do what you're doing now.
Okay, so for quite a convoluted path into fitness, I was very sporty as a child. So I played a lot of team sports and did a lot of training around those sports as well. So mainly rugby and rowing. All through school, got to university, realized I wasn't quite packing the size I needed for rugby anymore. So I dallied with boxing for a bit. And through all that, I just loved all the extra training that went around all those sports. So yeah, stuff like circuit training, weight training, and I've kept that up. My career was actually in media to start with. So I used to write for lifestyle magazines. I was part of the team that set up the Ministry of Sounds magazine back in the late 90s. And I then progressed through media, climbed the corporate ladder, but it wasn't really satisfying me. So in 2011, I took the big leap. I moved to Ibiza, which I obviously knew from my Ministry of Sound days in a very different guise. But I knew it was a beautiful island, and there was so much to show people there. I had this idea to bring people out and basically train them, but based in like really nice hotels, show them the island, get outdoors as much as possible. And it's just grown from there, really. So yeah, now we run retreats in Ibiza, Marbella and London.
Wow. So you moved back to the UK and then started taking groups of people out.
Well, we stayed out there. I'm actually stuck in the UK at the moment. So generally we come back to the UK for a bit of winter, which sounds weird. We leave Ibiza for winter.
It doesn't sound weird to me over here. It sounds like luxury.
Yeah, but we should actually be in Ibiza now running our retreats, but obviously the world had different plans. So we're hunkered down in London and yeah, just making the best of it.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, really, really inspiring that you're running virtual retreats. I think that's so cool. I think we'd love to run something like that for our members, you know, just to do a full day of exciting things that bring our kind of methodology together for our community. I think that'd be so cool. So yeah,
Well, it's a great way, you know
work.
what? Yeah, people really seem to love the community side of it. Although, you know, because there's obviously so many great resources have come out of this whole lockdown situation. You know, you can get online workshops, training sessions, experts all over the place, which is amazing. But with the retreat format, it's just like getting everyone together for a shared experience, and where they can all kind of comment and chat as well. What's been beautiful about it is seeing people in there that don't actually know each other and haven't met start connecting and chatting with chat, and some of them even arranged like, oh, we must meet up as soon as this is over. It's really great to see that happen.
Yeah, it's so true. I think people seek connection, especially if they have had that taken away from them, right, in the physical sense. We can't connect like we used to, so we almost yearn for that again, and so it's strange. I mean, you know, we've had a pretty hardcore lockdown here where we haven't been able to move much, but you know, for me, it seems like people have been trying to connect with us more than they have before, you know?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. We're just connecting in different ways to how we used to. Yeah.
So okay, so you're running virtual retreats now, and that's the plan for the foreseeable future, I'm guessing then, yeah?
It is. I mean, we were quite fortunate going into this that about just under 2 years ago, we started creating and building our own online training platform anyway, which was primarily designed for our retreat clients. So recognize they're kind of coming on a retreat. That's great. They're with us for a week or a long weekend, getting loads of healthy habits, loads of like mindset work and motivation. But then, yeah, we don't see them again. We keep in touch with a lot of them, but there's no really any follow up. So we designed this whole platform. So we already have this like online presence in place that has a library of workouts, that has nutrition, that has recipes. So we weren't coming into this cold, although of course we've had to up our game quite a lot since lockdown, because retreats, you know, was our main business, in-person retreats.
Okay, cool, brilliant. So in your retreats, tell us a little bit about that. What do you go into? Do you talk about nutrition and immunity as well in the retreats? Yeah,
so our whole approach is holistic. I don't particularly like that word, but it best sums it up. So what we recognize really early on when we're working with clients is, you know, you can do all the work on the body that you want, but if you're not switching the mind, you're kind of wasting your time. You know, just working on the external will take you so far, and you'll know this from your martial arts, you know, background and kind of values and philosophies you instill with your pupils. You know, the change has to come from inside, and you have to work on those internal aspects. If you look at it, something like really simple, say like a common thing people come to you for is say weight loss. You know, you'll see clients with that classic history of yo-yo diet. And that's because they can do the work, they can restrict the calories, they can do the hard work in the gym, but somewhere in there is that internal value, that self-identity that I am not a slim person, I'm a bigger person, I will not keep this up. At some point, I'm going to end. And that they kind of resign themselves and condemn themselves to this yo-yo unless you can change that internal part. So before I got into all my writing work, I spent like 5 years studying psychology at university, and I'm a qualified NLP coach as well. So a lot of the work we do is on the mindset side, helping people like find their why, the reason for why they want to change, and then work on changing their identity in line with what they want to achieve. So yeah, the retreats, lots of different training styles, mindset work, and of course a nutrition approach as well, simply because nutrition isn't really taught in schools. We're not educated in nutrition, and you know, most people when they're going wrong aren't going wrong through any fault of their own. They just simply haven't been taught this stuff, you know. And add into that the kind of mainstream media mix is we've kind of been brought up on this very quick fix mentality. You know, certain newspapers or magazines, it's like every other month there's the new miracle diet where you can lose 30 pounds in 30 days, you know, and yeah, 3 months later they're slamming that diet, saying how unhealthy it is, but they've got you the next one, and we've just been programmed into this quick fix. It's not healthy at all, you know. We just need to be taking a sustainable approach to healthy eating and celebrating food. You know, the key to it, nutrition is nourishing, and what we eat should be nourishing our bodies, and we should be like grateful when we're nourishing them, but just making the right choices.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, really, really interesting. I love the sound of your treats. They sound, you know, they sound holistic.
Thank you.
I know you didn't want me to use that word, but yeah, I'm completely with you when it comes to, you know, the mind being the limiting factor. And you know, you can work on the physical as much as you want, but ultimately, if you don't tap into the mind and start developing that and the character, then ultimately you're going to be limiting yourself, right? I mean, this exactly. Like you said, with our philosophies for our students, you know, it's not getting a black belt that's the goal. It's getting a black belt character, and ultimately to get that, you need to develop a black belt mindset and all these different things which come together, right? So completely aligned with what you're saying there. It sounds like there's a lot of typical mistakes that you found. And especially when it comes to yo-yo diets and all these different things, people going up and down, their motivation going up and down. And it sounds like there's a lot of myths out there when it comes to nutrition. Could you guide us through perhaps 5 of your biggest myths around nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the first one is fat is the enemy. And if you're of a certain age, you know, you remember when low-fat food became like the biggest fad, and like every brand had its low-fat version. And, you know, all we read about was how fat was the enemy and it caused all these horrible diseases and caused you to put on weight, you know, and there is some truth in that. You know, you can divide your fats into various categories, and the one we want to avoid is saturated fats. You know, they're good in small amounts. And man-made fats, trans fats, we want to try and eliminate. But actually, fat got a really bad rep. And a lot of that original research that was commissioned in the 70s by the American Heart Foundation, they actually set out at the outset to find fat as a culprit. So there was confirmation bias at the start. And a lot of the research, they've re-looking at it and actually finding some research that was suppressed. They actually found that really it was sugar was a bigger culprit for poor health and obesity. And I'm going to cover that in another. But the first one is like when you see low-fat food, because I think we're still programmed. If we see the low-fat version of something, we think that's going to be better for us.
Yeah.
What I encourage people to do is start learning what we work with all our clients is like start to learn nutrition labels, because you'll often see on the back per 100 grams or 100 mils, you'll see this figure carbohydrates of which sugars. And why it's important when you're looking at the low fat is often when we take the naturally occurring fats from food, you lose a lot of the flavor. So the food manufacturers make up for that by chucking in way more sugar. So you'll sometimes find that the low fat version is actually way higher in sugar than the full fat. So it's always worth comparing, and often you're better off getting like a decent amount of healthy fats in your diet and going for the full fat version and maybe eating a bit less of it than going for, in your head, this is healthy, but absolutely rammed with sugar.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Low fat, not always, no.
So low fat, not always. Okay, so no. would you avoid low fats, or?
I would just educate yourself on the labels. I mean, I think the best thing people can do is educate on labels, and I'll dive into a bit on that when I talk about the sugar as well, because it's quite a complex area, and food manufacturers are quite crafty.
Yeah.
But actually, I'll go into it now. So sugar, basically, when we eat sugar, really simplify the body energy exchange system. When we eat, basically, our body produces insulin to convert that food to glucose, so sugar that's available for energy now. What we don't use there and then gets stored in the muscles as glycogen. What we don't use after that will, of course, get stored as body fat. So you can imagine if we eat like a packet of gummy bears, super high sugar, it's released really fast into our system. Chances are we're not going to process that for energy straight away. So, of course, if our calories aren't aligned, I think that's going to lay down as fat. So there's a few things we want to be doing. Number one is food manufacturers have got really clever at knowing that sugar is highly addictive. And once you start eating something sugary, you just want to keep eating more of it. And in fact, there's lots of research that shows stuff like our standard chocolate bars, they have between 20 and 30% more sugar in than the same bar of 20 years ago. Same even with bananas. Bananas being selectively bred, they're about 20% higher in sugars than the bananas of about 20 years ago, because our palates have got sweeter and sweeter.
Yeah.
And it's got so bad, there's even sugars in food that aren't labeled as sugars. So the main one that some of the out there might have is maltodextrin. So sugar and starches are like one molecule different. So if something is molecularly a starch, it doesn't have to be labeled as a sugar. To the extent I've seen boxes of like really yummy looking granola, it says sugar free. I'm like,
yeah, right.
I pick it up, read the back, and I'm like, oh yeah, sugar content. So then it's the other thing this is really a important one. When you read ingredients on a box, they're done by mass. So the first ingredient is what there is the most of. And on this cereal, the second one, maltodextrin. So maltodextrin, technically, it's a starch, but it's actually very, very sweet. It's very cheap to produce. It's piled into foods to make them sweet. They can legitimately claim it's a no sugar or low sugar food because maltodextrin isn't a sugar, even though it's sweet. And it has exactly the same insulin effect on your body, i.e. it will spike your insulin up, which is bad for all kinds of reasons.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's incredible.
Watch your sugars is the main one. And, you know, that's why we're seeing such an obesity epidemic right now around the world, because the amount of sugars we're having in our diet has got higher. Of course, sugar is very calorific. So overall calories are increasing. Our calorie intake is increasing, but also we're just having more and more sugar. And if we're getting these huge energy spikes, but we're not using that energy, of course, it's going to be laid down as body fat.
Yeah, definitely. Right. It's just strikes me that so many people don't know this. Do you know what I mean? You've really got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, it's just simple things like, you know, Claire's mom, bless her, we always use an example. She does Slimming World, which has been amazing for her. And they, you know, you've got your accountability of your weighing group, and they give you your foods you can eat, but it takes you to a certain point, and she kind of got stuck. And the thing was, you have like free food. So she, at night, when we were staying with them, massive bowl of fresh fruit. And we're like, this is the worst thing to be eating late at night, because fruit is good for its micronutrients, its vitamins and minerals, but bad because it is very high in naturally occurring sugars. If you're eating a big bowl of fruit late at night, that is basically just charging a load of sugar into your system, probably going to give you a restless night's sleep, but also it's going to spike your insulin levels. That energy is not going anywhere while you're sleeping in bed. So it's more likely to turn to body fat because you're just chucking in high GI food, high calories late at night.
Yeah, right. Wow. Brilliant advice. So educate yourself on labels, watch your sugars, and, you know, look at fat options. Fats are friends.
Yeah, exactly. My next one is carbohydrates. So carbs have had a really bad rep.
They've had a bad rep. They've had a bad rep recently, haven't they?
You know, we've all heard no carbs before marbs and all the rest of it. Listen, this is really interesting. We've seen things as well, like come through now, like the keto diet. For that, again, if you don't know, it's like a reinvention of the Atkins. You basically prioritize proteins and fats, and you try and minimize your carbohydrates to virtually nothing. Yeah. The theory of this working, and I can tell you because I trial these things on myself because I want to know what the effects are for clients, and I want to try it. So I've done it. So the science is our bodies are primarily programmed to run on carbohydrate energy. It's our preferred primary fuel source. If we can't get sufficient carbohydrates, we'll switch to a state of ketosis, which is where we'll switch to burning fat for energy rather than using glucose, the glucose energy system, which we get from carbohydrates. So if we can eliminate the carbohydrates from our diet, and it takes different people different amount of time, but between 7 to 14 days, you'll start then switching to ketosis for your energy, and you'll start burning fat, which sounds great. I can tell you it's very hard to get there. You're miserable getting there. Because we are designed to run on carbohydrate energy, your concentration goes. Your brain's actually largely run on carbohydrate energy. So your concentration goes, you get fuzzy thinking. And although you will lose body fat, you'll also lose some muscle mass. And if you're training and want to put on muscle, you'll find it almost impossible because although protein is one everyone's heard of, you do need carbohydrate to build new muscle fibers as well. Yeah. Why carbs got a bad name is diets like this, but we're just eating too many of the wrong type of carbohydrates. And interestingly, the Lancet did the biggest ever study on carbohydrate ratios in diets. And they went in with the hypothesis that where they saw a high carbohydrate diet, i.e. more than, I think it was about 60% of your diet would be made of carbohydrates, you would have a raised mortality risk, so increased risk of death. Obviously, because a diet where you're shoveling in cakes and burgers and stuff is not going to be great for you. What they actually found when they did, they actually found a U-shaped curve. So although the mortality risk was higher if you had a high carbohydrate diet, if you had a low carbohydrate diet, the mortality risk was actually higher than high carbohydrate. They're still investigating why that is. One thought is that the ketosis system was only ever designed as like a backup for short term. It's not designed to be a long-term state. We don't really know yet. But the key takeaway from them studying thousands and thousands of research papers, the optimum amount of carbohydrates to minimize your mortality risk is around 50% of your diet.
Wow.
So we'd always say to people, try and get between 40 and 60% of your plate is carbohydrates, but the right kind. And why they've got a bad rep, we're just eating too many of the wrong kind. Linking back to the sugar argument, it's all the refined, the processed, you know, baked goods, breads, pastas. What we should be doing is filling our plates with like lots of leafy greens, colorful vegetables, small amounts of fruits. Those are the kind of carbohydrates you want to be getting in, like big amounts of like fresh green foliage.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting that, isn't it? I mean, when you look at it long term, I don't think very many people do look at it super long term, you know, to the point of mortality. They're looking at it more for short term, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it does work. I mean, I'm not, you know, I always say when things work, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. And ketosis, you know, going into keto does work to help you lose fat in the short term. I think if you're considering going down that route, though, maybe look at it as a short-term thing. The problem, of course, with all diets that are restrictive in some way is what happens when you come off. So with keto, if your body hasn't been eating carbs for a very long time, as soon as you do start eating carbohydrates again, which if you have anything resembling a normal life, you probably are going to do, because so many foods are suddenly, you know, off limits, your body will just attempt to hold on to all that energy, and you actually get probably more weight gain than you lost.
Yeah, right. And a lot of water storage, I'm guessing, as well.
A lot of water storage as well with the carbohydrates, yeah.
What are your thoughts on fasting?
I like fasting as an approach. So again, it's one that we've played with and we work with clients on. So as you mentioned, there's two main fasting protocols. There's the 5-2, which is basically where you eat normal diet for 5 days a week and then eat a low amount of calories for 2 days a week. And most people normally do like a fasting weekend and a week. That does get results, but there's research starting to come out that it's having an adverse impact on insulin levels because you're kind of feast famine. Yeah. And also there's now definitely links as well. People who might be prone to eating disorders, like psychological eating disorders, it's can trigger them because again, you're doing the feast famine thing.
Yeah,
So you're kind of denying yourself for 2 days, being really restrictive, and then having what you want. And the main point for everyone is what tends to happen on that diet after a time is because you know you've got a famine stage coming up for 2 days, rather than eating still within like a calorie controlled 5-day window, you're just like, oh yeah, 2 double cheeseburgers is fine because I'm going to fast at the weekend.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Our preferred method is the other one, which is you have a shortened eating window in the day. So typically females would fast for 14 hours, males would fast for 16 hours, which sounds a lot. But what it essentially means to fit it into a busy lifestyle is try and have your dinner as early as you can and your breakfast as late as you can. I mean, if you can hit 14, 16 hours, terrific. And you will see results from it. And what it means is you can still have a healthy, very balanced diet. You're not denying yourself anything you might want to eat or drink. You're just shortening the window when you do have that. What we work with clients on a lot actually is kind of hacking that approach. If they can't, for whatever reason, like lifestyle, some people, you know, they for family reasons or business reasons, they have to have dinner late and they've got to be up and on the go early in the morning. It's not practical to, you know, leave such a long window. We do fasted high intensity interval training. So there's a lot of research around that if you get up first thing in the morning, you have nothing that's going to start your digestive cycle. So basically water, a herbal tea or black coffee, but nothing that's going to start your digestive. Do a short but intense high intensity interval training. So, you know, like block of hard work, short rest, block of hard work, 15 to 20 minutes, basically. Because you have naturally fasted overnight and your glycogen and glucose is depleted, you'll then tap to the body fat. And also because you're going at intensity, creating the oxygen debt, you're going to spike your metabolism for the rest of the day and burn more calories. So that's a really good hack, fasted hit.
Yeah,
tricky the first time to try it if you're not used to it, but just get up, black coffee. I just an espresso shot and then just smash like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, nothing's happening without the coffee, is it? I mean, especially if you're fasting.
Not for me. I need my coffee.
Just go back to bed. I think it sounds very familiar to what I do, to be honest. For a long time, I was fasting sort of 18 hours a day.
Wow, impressive.
Well, you can get used to anything, right? So, I mean, you started off doing just 14 hours, 16 hours, and it became quite easy to do all the eating in a 4 to 6 hour period. Two big meals, one at 12 or 1 o'clock, and one at 5 or 6 o'clock. And then waking up having a black coffee, and if I was lifting weights in the morning, everything would be in supersets or triple sets. Do you know what I mean? Back to back. So you're literally doing 1 to 2 minutes on, and then 1 or 2 minutes off, and keeping it in that way, or doing bag work and having the same approach. But certainly, it was such a great way to get really lean. And also it strangely gave me a lot of energy. I wouldn't feel tired, but definitely that first week, I remember the first 1 or 2 weeks, you're just always hungry.
It is.
Go back to it. Yeah,
it's the only approach that we really suggest out of all the fad approaches, because we know it works and you can fit it around your lifestyle. But like you say, it's just an adaptation. We're so programmed to having breakfast before we do something. It's just overcoming that hunger but it's like you, when I've done it, I find it's like a week of going, "Whoa, I'm hungry," and then you come through the other side, and like you say, you end up feeling more energy.
Right, and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You're thinking, how am I not hungry at this stage? I've wasted the whole day, and I've already trained. You should be starving, right? But it makes you think. And I mean, you'll know a lot more than this about me than me. But the kind of history of this it's looking back into evolution and how, as human beings, we'd only have one big meal a day, right?
Yeah, but even if you look back to like our ancestors, so probably like our great grandparents' generation and before that. A lot of them, if they were doing manual work, they would tend to get up. Really, only the upper classes would get up and have breakfast. They tend to get up, head out, work. And if things like 11s would be kind of their first, they'd eat something like late mid-morning. And sometimes they had this thing of like, 2 lunches. So they have 11s and a lunch and then dinner and then go to bed.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, I guess the invention.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only kind of counter theory I've heard to this kind of evolutionary argument is that, with foragers, human beings used to be foragers. So we would go around and we would just spend the whole day, grazing and looking for seeds or nuts or plants or whatever we could eat as we went. I mean, how do you see that?
I think we're probably a mix of both. I think, if you've ever tried foraging, it's quite intensive. Like you have to you do spend your day basically trying to find food. But if you look at how human culture and society has developed, clearly at some point people in tribes or whatever, it's like, it's going to be better if we can organize our food, then we can focus on building other stuff, creating works of art, decking the cave out nicely.
Decking the cave out.
So I buy it as an argument, but I think humans, we are the dominant species on the planet, and that's because we have got something else to us, and that we don't just get up and think, oh, I need to eat today, let's wander around and try and figure what we can eat. We've got the ability to plan ahead and create things that help our lives. So
brilliant. Have you read the book Sapiens?
No, but you're the third person that's recommended it.
Oh, really?
To me.
It's a sign. You should get it. I think you love that. Guys, anyone watching this at home, get that book, Sapiens. Really, really interesting. If you want to dive into the kind of evolution of human beings, and especially when we're talking about this kind of tribal aspect, right? And it gives you a good insight into a lot of the decisions and fears and everything that human beings have now and where that kind of comes from. But yeah, really, really, really interesting. And yeah, completely with you. I think we must have gone through this stage of being foragers or whatever, and then evolving into almost, having this community where we would, as you said, people would go out, get food, bring it back. You'd have that evening meal, while other things are going on around the community, and then you'd almost celebrate the fact that you were able to eat together, right?
Exactly that. And that's the sad thing. I think in today's society, food has become for a lot of people like the enemy. It's like, oh, I don't want to eat too much of that, or if I'm having that, it's a treat. And if we go right back, our bodies are only functioning because of what we put into them, and food is in effect a celebration of life. So we should be like finding ways we can enjoy what we want to have within reason and live a balanced life, rather than just trying to live this restrictive all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a real push nowadays. People seem to be more interested in their food, I'd say, and more they're more interested in growing it, where it's coming from. They want organic. You know, we when we were in the UK, we were growing our own food. We were pretty much self-sufficient in terms of vegetables from the garden. I mean, here in Dubai, it's a bit harder, but we've had every herb you can imagine. We're growing pineapples. We've got a mango tree and loads of tomatoes, and you know. So it's quite cool. And chilies, as you can imagine, are quite easy out here. But man cannot live off chilies alone, right? it's not great. So we're definitely not self-sufficient from my Dubai allotment, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, do you see that kind of shift in the way people are looking at food now?
People are definitely more into their food and interested in knowing the provenance of it. The big thing, obviously running retreats, you've got a lot of dietary requirements. So of course, the big thing we've seen is a lot of people presenting with more intolerances or allergies.
Yeah.
And of course, they are on the increase for a variety of reasons in a row, but also a lot, like, you know, stuff like the gluten-free is one. I think only something like 2% of the world have a celiac disposition that makes them intolerant, like to a serious degree of gluten. What's starting to happen for a lot of people is we're eating too much of this like ultra processed food, and that includes bread. Again, you know, I do like to look back. If you think of a loaf of bread that our great grandparents would have gone and bought from the bakery, you know, that would have been locally grown grain, locally milled flour, fresh. That bread would have been baked that day. It probably lasted a couple of days before it, you know. Now you can go to the supermarket and the bread can sit there for weeks and still be edible.
Yeah.
So number one is we're just putting too much of the processed rubbish in, but also just living before the coronavirus happened, living in a really stressful environment. You know, like we should be taking our time with our food and eating it mindfully. But I've been in the corporate world. You know how it is. You rush out, you grab a sandwich, you're back at your desk chewing your sandwich as you're typing emails, your report, and of course, then you'll be like, "Oh, my tummy." And a lot of people then going, "Oh, I'm gluten intolerant." Well, no, you're eating rubbish, like under stress, way too fast. You know, there's a lot going on. Well,
that reminds me of another book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Have you heard that?
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that. He speaks a lot. It's if anyone who hasn't read that or seen that, it's a story of this gymnast who basically has like a near fatal accident. He can't do gymnastics anymore. He loses his gymnastics career, and he finds this older guy at a petrol station who becomes a bit of a mentor to him, right? And he teaches him everything. A lot of it is mindfulness, meditation, you know, a lot of this sort of stuff, and a big part of that is mindful eating, right? And having this basically exactly what you said, taking your time with it. You know, the guy was finished eating before he'd even started, right?
Exactly. And there's loads of research as well, you know, that they've done countless studies on it. If you're sitting eating your meal, watching TV or whatever, you'll eat it way faster and basically miss the mouth gut connection in terms of all the hormones that we produce when we're eating food, and be hungrier sooner and eat way more than if you were just sitting there actually mindfully eating your food, chewing it properly, taking your time and enjoying the meal. So it's definitely something to think about.
Interesting. Is that something you speak about in your retreats?
Yeah, definitely. We cover that. We talk about nutrition myths and like constructing a healthy diet, but also eating habits as well. You know, there's all this research now. Majority of our neurotransmitters are actually produced in our gut, not in our brain, which is why we have this emotional feedback loop with food. You know, that thing is like, oh, I feel a bit depressed. I'll eat a bar of chocolate. You feel really good again because you've had a bar of chocolate. Then you start to feel really bad that you've had the bar of chocolate. And it's because it's all happening down here in the gut. This is where all the neurotransmitters are for. There's a book on something, I think it's called like 10% Human or something like that. And it's about a researcher and about all the neurotransmitters that are actually in our gut that are controlling and conditioning our emotions and behavior. And so how much our food and what we ingest is contributing to that, as opposed to what we thought, say 10 years ago, that it was all coming from the brain.
Wow, really, really interesting. We've got some great comments here, actually, if you can see on the side. Vicky says, I love this. Seb says, Sapiens is great. Highly recommend Rebel Ideas. Seb says, it's a 21st century dig for victory mentality. I like it because I know I'm getting fresh and untouched food. Brilliant. Quick question here, James. I've switched from dairy to soya. Are there pros and cons for cutting dairy?
Yeah, there's pros and cons. So I'd say small amounts of dairy are great. If you're not dairy intolerant, then fantastic. I personally find a lot of clients find if you start to have a lot of dairy in your diet, it's very mucus producing. So I notice if I start to have a lot of dairy, it's producing much more mucus. I generally advise people to have only smaller amounts of it. Soy as an alternative, I'm not keen on, just because so much of it is GM modified, and there's a lot of evidence that soy is like higher in estrogen than a lot of other foods, so it can actually spike your estrogen levels, which if you're a guy, well, even if you're a male or female, is not great news. There's a lot of great milk alternatives out there. I'd rather you go for like a nut milk or an oat milk alternative. The soy, yeah, I'm just not that a massive fan of.
Really, really interesting. Cool. What about things like tofu then? You're not interested in that?
I eat it occasionally, but again, I would never recommend to everyone to make base their diet around. You get a lot of vegetarians and vegans, and they're eating loads of it. And I think it's just not a great. It's a good protein source, but unless you know the provenance of where it's come from, and you've got a way of managing like the estrogen level issues that could occur if you're eating a lot of it. I mean, you have to eat a lot. But it's like everything in life, everything in balance. So if I fancy my tofu stir fry, I'll have it. You know.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. Any more nutrition myths?
I think that the last one I was going to say was about protein, because this is protein is very good for us. It's my favorite macro. Protein obviously plays a key role in supporting the central nervous system and helping us build and repair muscle tissue, carries out lots of great things. It's also very filling when we eat it. So when we eat fats and protein, it triggers a hormone called leptin, which is our I'm full hormone. Its rival is one called ghrelin. And I always remember that by thinking of a gremlin. So when you get that rumbly tummy and you're hungry, that is your ghrelin playing up. And again, it can be when your blood sugar's off, you'll get the ghrelin going. But protein and fats will trigger your leptin. But the problem with protein at the moment is it's become like fat. It's suddenly become trendy. Like there's suddenly all these foods that are like high protein Mars bar, high protein Snickers, and they're even like at gyms, like on the counter, high protein Mars bar.
And the problem with trendy macros means that they're going to find a way of cheaply producing it, right, for the masses.
They tend to have altered the formulation now, I believe, but when they originally came out, the high protein versions again had way more sugar than the normal version, so you'd be better off having the standard chocolate bar than the high protein version. Wow. So just one for watch, protein, great in the diet. My last top tip, if you are looking to drop body fat, when you've got your plate, prioritize eating your fats and protein first, because it will trigger the leptin, the I'm full hormone. You'll have less room for your carbohydrates afterwards, because they don't tend to trigger it as fast. So yeah, if you'll get your Sunday roast or whatever, go for the meat first and then tackle the potatoes last.
The Yorkshire pudding at the very end. At the very end. I save the Yorkshire pudding to the end anyway, Brilliant. That was, some amazing nutritional myths there. Busted. I like that. The myth buster.
Thank you.
Philippa Thorpe says coconut milk. Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Really interesting. Thanks, says Seb. And Philippa says, this is really helpful to link my learning in GCSE PE to daily life. Awesome.
Glad.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely. And, that's, again, a lot of the stuff we talk about in these interviews, guys, you should be able to, feel the same way. A lot of the stuff we're talking about can be applied to daily life. This is stuff that you can kind of use every single day, right? It'd be great to talk to you about immunity and optimizing your immunity.
Yeah, obviously a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So what
made you choose that?
So we've all got our immune systems running, and there's unscrupulous people out there that you'll see ads for immune boosting supplements and all the rest of it, like the same as ways you get weight loss supplements. And we always coach people on like a nutrition pyramid, where at the bottom you've got the most important thing, which if you're looking to lose body fat is calories, because if you're eating too many calories every day, it doesn't matter how many skinny sprinkles or miracle weight loss teas you're drinking at the top of the pyramid. It's not going to work. And people are now like, oh, this supplement, this supplement, this supplement. Listen, our bodies are amazing and we have an immune system. Unfortunately, for many of us, that immune system won't be running at its optimized level, just purely because we're probably not eating as a balanced diet as we could be. We've got too many processed food, too much sugar, and we're not getting the amount of exercise we should be. If we do want to increase our immunity so that we're better able to fight off germs and things, then in a nutshell, we want to make sure we're getting a really healthy, balanced diet. And we always say like a rainbow of food on your plate, but natural colors is a good way to think about it. And one of our mottos is from field or sea to table with as few steps in between. Meaning, you know, your classic dish of, you know, a grilled fish or a grilled bit of meat with like loads of fresh salad, fresh vegetables, steamed vegetables, ideal. At the other end of the spectrum, you know, if you've unwrapped the thing out of plastic and cardboard and put it in the microwave for 5 minutes, not going to be ideal in terms of nutritional balance. So, but there are certain things you can do, right? So number one, make sure your diet's healthy. Make sure you're drinking enough water every day. We need like between 2 and 3 liters of water to keep hydrated. I wouldn't ever recommend anyone goes out to supplement without like testing first. But typically, you know, things that are going to help. Vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, so it flushes from our system very quickly. You can't actually overdose on vitamin C. It plays a key role in supporting the immune system. You want to get it from natural sources. Things like kiwi fruits, actually higher in vitamin C than oranges. Historical fact, you know, citrus fruits, that's why Americans call English people limeys. It's because the Royal Navy had a real problem with scurvy at sea. It was only when a doctor discovered it was vitamin C deficiency, they started carrying barrels of limes on their ships. So the Royal Navy had barrels of limes. They got the name limeys. So yeah, citrus fruits, kiwi fruits, things like zinc. Again, if you're eating a lot of red meat, seafood, you should be getting decent amounts of zinc, but many of us probably aren't. And then on the exercise side, just like getting out there, making sure you're getting at least 3 to 4 times a week, getting your heart rate up, moving your body in a full range of motion. Because if we just sit and we're static, you know, all the systems slowing down. You want to keep the body moving, keep it fresh, keep it energized. I mean, you'll know this, Seb. I'm sure it's cornerstone of what you teach. You know, healthy body, healthy mind. It really does create a feedback loop to everything else. And I would say the last point on it is not diet, not exercise, but more the mental, emotional. So stress can play a massive role in depleting our immune system. When we're in fear, when we're stressed, our immune system basically crashes. So what that means is just, you know, practicing positive affirmations every day. When you wake up in the morning, just make sure you're grounding yourself, set yourself, like we're always working with clients, say, don't get up, don't put on your phone, don't look at emails, don't check social media, don't turn on the news. Before you let the outside world, the external, come in and hit you, ground yourself first. So just take time. A little exercise we like to do is just, you know, you can think of it in your head or write it down. 3 things I'm grateful for from yesterday. 3 great things that I'm grateful for from yesterday. 3 things that are great in my life at the moment, and an affirmation for the day that I'm going to carry with me. And then that grounds you before you go into anything else.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's got an incredible compounding effect as well. The guys listening right now, you know, Seb, Philippa, Vicky, everyone here, and you know, everyone who's going to see this now and later in both the Dubai groups and the UK groups, we do a daily habit routine with them every single morning. Instructor Matt and instructor Aaron do, and a big part of that we ask people to meditate every single morning for a few minutes, and the other aspect is something physical, to get the blood pumping, release endorphins, just get mobile, get active, and also to write down 3 things they're grateful for. And it just has an incredible, it just has an incredible, you know, impact, especially when it comes to something like this, a situation, you know, like this, where perspective can really help with mindset, perspective on how lucky we are to have what we've got, and really kind of feel that gratitude. I think one of the greatest tools we've asked our students to do is get a glass jar and fill it up, and then they've, you know, every day they put in 3 things they're grateful for, and over time there's like a visual representation of that. Another really good example I've heard from Mina, who was on recently, was to do gratitude links. So she, as like Christmas time, whatever, you would put a bit of paper, you stick it together, and you create like links. She would do that for something you're grateful for, and they do that as a family, and see how long they could create this trail. Amazing. Right, over time. So just little tricks there to get visual representation of the mental side of what you're doing, because the physical side is quite clear. I mean, you used to be able to do 5 press-ups, now you can do 50. Then you're gonna feel that difference. It's going to be quite visual. It's going to be quite easy for you to spot it. But certainly with the mental side, it's good to keep track. Definitely, really nice.
It's really important. It's awesome you do that, and like you say, really interesting point there about the physical versus the mental. Yeah, when you're working with someone in the physical space, you can see and they can feel the changes. With the mental, it's not always. People always ask, well, how will I know when? How will I know when? I'm like, you know what? There'll suddenly be a situation, and you'll deal with it in a completely different way, and you realize, wow, my mindset has totally shifted.
So true. If I meditate for a long, many days in a row, and then something massive happens in my life, I'm way more relaxed than if I've just been in this state of reacting to what's going on around me. Do you know what I mean? You're in a much calmer, poised position. So and it's funny, isn't it, when it comes to meditation? A lot of people say they don't have time for it, but it's exactly that sort of person who needs to make time for it, right?
Yeah, and start with baby steps, isn't it? It's all right just to spend 2 minutes writing these things down and calling that your meditation. It's not so you have to sit cross-legged for an hour in a room on your own humming. Don't be scared of it. Just start with the small steps and find what works for you and build your own practice over time.
Completely, and certainly one of the things I found with meditation is it doesn't need to be sitting down with your eyes closed. Meditation can be found in movement. I think the most important thing about meditation is that you're taking yourself into the now. You're taking yourself into that moment where you're not thinking about other things, right? So if it's for instance your martial arts combinations or your techniques that you can run through, maybe a pattern. I certainly found this with things like jiu-jitsu where you're rolling, but you're not really overthinking things. You're just relaxing and you're getting into almost like a flow state. That's an amazing way once you're in a flow state too, and you guys can look into that flow state. It's really, really interesting topic. But when you go into that, suddenly the rest of your day feels so relaxed. It's like if you have a really good workout, right? Where you may have gone stressed into it, you do a really good workout, and then the rest of your day you're completely relaxed, because I feel you've, as well as all the endorphins, you spent that time in that moment where you've had no other focus but on the thing you're doing, right? And it's so powerful.
Totally. And listen, like self-care is so important all the time, but particularly when we're in this situation we're in at the moment. And again, a lot of people feel that self-care is in some way selfish, and it's wrong to be selfish. But as we say to clients, no, like focusing on yourself to be the best you can be is going to allow you to be better for other people. And, when you are the best version of yourself, how are you responding to other people around it? How are they responding to you? You actually start to give more out to other people. So self-care is so important, and it's not selfish, and everyone should take the time for self-care every day.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. You said something really interesting about the kind of the social side of immunity and actually like, longevity within that space. And it kind of struck me that a lot of the articles I've read in the past, or you hear about the people who have lived the longest in different areas of the world, right? And it's normally like the mountains in Japan or some of the Italians, and they've got this element of physicality in their routine, right? They're either cycling to pick up their vegetables every day, or they're like 95 years old, or they're 105 and they're making something. They're always busy doing something, right? Keeping their mind active, but keeping their body moving. But also in these kind of micro communities, they've got this amazing community. There's that amazing kind of social aspect of their kind of daily routine where they are seeing people, they are engaging with the community, they're not isolating too much. Have you noticed that when it comes to immunity as well?
Yeah, I mean, there is research around that, where there's a cardiologist wrote a book. He studied a small coastal town in Italy. I think it's called Popoli, and he wrote a book about it, the Popoli diet, because he found that they had their highest average length of life, and it was exactly that. It's like every day they would get up, go down the road to the seasons up on a cliff, collect their food, then they all go to, you know, congregate in the village square. So it's a whole thing, like moving the body, but socializing as well. And saying it's like, if you want to be really bleak about it, you know, as we age, we want reasons to still be around. And obviously, if you've got a wide social network, that's something you look forward to and engaging in and keeps you going. As opposed to if you're living on your own with like no real contact ever, of course you're going to start thinking, well, you know, why? What's the point in going on? You know, and that definitely I think happens for people. So when you look at people who you see who have lived these long, amazing lives, there's always generally like quite a high social element to it as well, and like a kind of like outgoing and communication and caring.
Yeah, brilliant advice. Because summarize that into a couple of hacks: live on a hill until you're very and then you've got no choice.
Get your food.
And and have an allotment at the bottom of the hill, which you have to pick your freshly grown food every day. James,
socialize
and socialize on the way. Say hello to everyone on the way down the hill. Knock on every door. James, that was absolutely amazing. Really appreciate you coming in. Some amazing insights and you know, myth busting going on. And really great education there, you know, to share with us on immunity and stuff. So really appreciate that. And what's the best way for anyone here to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do and maybe even experience a virtual retreat?
So contact like our Facebook page is 38 Degrees North, so a 3 and an 8 degrees north, or our website is 38degreesnorth.com, but that's all spelled out, unfortunately, THIRTY, etc. 38 Degrees North. If you Google us, we'll show up. Just put, you know, 38 Fitness Ibiza. And yeah, on the Facebook page, we'll tell you about other retreats we're going to do. We've got loads of free resources people can come and grab. And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to, you know, drop us an email or message us. And Seb, thank you. It's been amazing to be on here. So really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate it, mate. Take care.
Bye.